Collectible card games have been popular for decades now and have a massive fan base around the world. A well-designed card game can bring hours of fun and entertainment to its players, but the question is, how do you create your own card game from scratch, and what do you need to do to make it stand out from the rest? Well then, my name is Adrian, and this is Giant Monster Games, as you can clearly see from up here, and today we're kicking off episode 1 of a new series here on the channel called Let's Make a Collectible Card Game, which is not overly exciting or interesting or unique title, so let's call it something like LMA CCG EP numero uno, which is just an abbreviation, I guess, of literally what I just said. Anyways, this is going to be a two-pronged type approach to a series. The first half of the prong is going to be designing a card game or a board game. The principles for designing are both the same, so we are going to be kind of wrapping those into one and talking about what are the kind of things you need to be doing when you're designing your own game. So if you are an aspiring designer, this should be hopefully interesting to you. And then the second half is actually going to be a community-driven project where you, James, get to help me by designing this card game we're going to be making. So this is going to be largely run through the Discord, the Giant Monster Games Discord. There's a link below. You can actually jump into that if you aren't already there, where you guys can help me play test. You can design art for cards. We're going to be voting on themes and other kind of cool things. But enough with me monologuing on what I'm going to do and what my master plan is. For today's video, we're going to be covering design philosophy number 1, and that is simplicity. Yes, every single game, card games are no exception, should be easy to learn and understand. This means clear rules and mechanics that the players can quickly grasp, especially for new players. And let's not forget about the end goal of the game. It should be crystal clear right from the start so players can focus on that goal rather than getting lost and not sure how they actually need to proceed to win the game. Now, I know what you're thinking, Adrian, Magic the Gathering is a complex game. It's not simple at all. And you're not entirely wrong, but here's the thing. Most card games are not actually that complex when you think about the actual objective of the game. The objective for Magic the Gathering and almost every other card game is to bring your opponent's life total to 0. That's how you win the game. Well, how do you do that? Well, you play creatures and spells that deal damage to your opponent. Okay, well, how do we play that? Well, for a game like Magic the Gathering, there's going to be lands in your deck that you can then play and turn them sideways, called tapping, to create mana, which then you can use to spend on playing those creatures and spells. A lot of other games have actually simplified that process by just saying, hey, you get a mana at the start of every single turn. A new one. Easy. And there you have it. I just taught you how to play 90% of the card games out there. Yes, there are specifics like when can you play spells or how do creatures attack, but the basic idea of the game has been already laid out for you. Not that complicated. Now hold on, I'm not here to shit on your parade. I actually want to talk to you about emergent gameplay, which makes games like this actually interesting. You see, card games tend to be built up of a number of smaller mechanics. Every single card is its own kind of little mechanical device. On its own, it tends to be not really complex. They don't really usually do a whole lot. But once you start combining cards in your deck, you can start building synergies, which then can build a larger mechanical system that does something quite cool. Take any deck archetype as an example. You'll see that all of the cards in that deck are working in synergy, and they are now greater than the sum of their parts. They are giving their player an advantage because they all work together, compared to a deck of random cards or cards that just don't do anything special. So what have we learned from the first half of this video? Well, KISS. Keep it simple, Samantha, because Samantha, you constantly overcomplicated stuff. Your drama is unacceptable. Please just bring it down like 3 notches. It's just a game. I will concede for your mental health. How is that? Yeah. Anyways, the goal of the game should be clear, the mechanics should be easy to learn, and all of the complexity should come from the emergent gameplay of all of the pieces. That is how you're going to make a game shine. Now, what about the game that I've been working on? Does it follow all these exact same principles? Well, yes, it's actually following literally the exact same recipe. The objective is to bring your opponent's locations to 0 health. You do that by playing units and spells, and you get the idea. Let's jump over to the computer. I'm going to show you how to play the game, and I'm also going to point out where you can get the print and play so you can give the game a try as its current state. All the stuff in the game, for the record, is going to change as we go along, but this is a good starting point. And here we are inside of Tabletop Simulator. If you don't know Tabletop Simulator, it is essentially a platform that allows you to import your own stuff or import other games and play games inside of it. So what I've done is I've put together the game inside of here so I can show it to you easily and effectively. So what is this game that we are working on currently? It is called Battle. That's why there's the word battle across the back of all the cards here. And the way the game works is each player starts out by choosing 2 locations that are going to make up what their deck is going to be about. Example being, I have a Brighthorn Labyrinth and Dark Undercity. These are my 2 locations for this deck. Actually, these are the 2 locations that are in the print and play as well, so you'll be able to test these out if you really want. They make up the kind of cards you can have in your deck, so example being, you can have Tower Watch cards in your deck list, or you can have Rogue cards in your deck list. They also have a couple other little bit of anatomy things. There's a picture piece of art, which is temporary. This is just a placeholder, so it looks nice, but this will be changing. This will probably be the last time you actually see this, honestly. And then there is a shield icon. That is how much health that location has, a name, and then the word location, which is the card type. Now, these cards also flip over, so you can see that there is a destroyed version of the card. And then when a location is destroyed, other things happen. So on destruction, there's a trigger that happens with words that happen, and then there's sometimes abilities that'll happen that are residual, things that keep going on because that thing has been destroyed. Now we're going to work into what is your deck list and how does that actually work into the game. So you have 2 piles of cards. You have your main deck and you have your reserve. Your main deck is a minimum of a 40 card deck, and your reserve is a maximum of 10 cards. Your reserve is similar to a sideboard, but throughout the game you actually access it. As far as copies are concerned, you're allowed to have 3 copies of the same card in your deck list. That is between your reserve and your main deck, and that's the entire rules for building your deck list. Other things players will need to play the game. You're going to need something to represent resources. There will be resources made down the road. Right now, I'm literally just using jokers. You'll also need tokens and counters. So I have little white tokens here so I can put them on things. Damage is persistent across all rounds and all turns. So you'll need a way of keeping track of how much damage units and your locations have taken. And then you're also going to need just dice. You can either use dice to keep track of damage, or dice that are also going to be really good to keep track of stuff like 1/1 counters or other things that are going to need to be put on cards. As far as the kind of cards that are actually in the game, we have 3 types of cards currently. There will likely be more as we get farther into the game development process, but right now there are 3. We've already talked about locations quickly. Then we have units. Units are what you're going to be attacking your opponent with. They also have abilities and do all kinds of other fun stuff. And then we have spells. Spells are either fast or slow. If they are slow, you can play them only when there's nothing on the stack and it is your turn. Fast, you can play them in response to whatever. Think of them as instants and sorceries in a lot of ways. The anatomy breakdown of these 2 cards is relatively simple. We have a cost up at the top, how much it costs to play it in mana. We have a faction icon, so different decks will have different factions. Then we have the name of the card, the type of card, so this is where you see if it's a unit or a spell, and then cards also have an attack power and a health. And then we have keywords, so keywords will be flying or trample or things that you will see again and again and again on cards. And then we have our rules box, which makes every single card unique. And then lastly, we have the card ID at the bottom. After that, let's actually talk about how you play the game. First of all, both players reveal the locations they are going to be playing with in the game. Because the game is designed to be best of 1, we actually give our opponent information at the beginning of the game, and then we get to sideboard. So we get to take cards from our reserve and put them into our main deck, and take cards out of our main deck and put them into reserve. Again, you have to maintain the balance of your 2 decks, so you still have to have a minimum of 40 cards in your main deck after you've done swapping stuff out, and a maximum of 10 cards in your reserve. After that, you randomly determine who is going to start with the initiative token. This is who reacts first and who gets to play first on the first turn of the first round. Players then draw 4 cards each, and the game starts at the beginning phase like it is every other turn gonna be. So there is no mulligan, and there is no exceptions for turn 1. Now, before I get into the beginning phase and talk about all of the nitty-gritty of the game, let's talk about some major fundamental things you need to know about the game in order to play it. For starters, there is no my turn, your turn thing going on in this game, where you do all of your stuff and then I do all of my stuff. The way the game works is whoever has the initiative token starts the game by choosing a single action. The actions can be play a unit, play a spell, activate an ability on a card, so that's usually going to be a unit, sometimes a location, go to combat, which is each player gets their own combat each round, so it's not like on my turn I get to do combat, on your turn you get to do combat. Nope, none of that. We both get combats every single turn. Or pass. That is the last action. So there's 5 actions you can choose, and then once you take that action, both players will have a chance to respond. So I'm going to play my unit, and then we can respond to me playing that unit. Once players have done passing, doing all the responding stuff, it resolves, and then it goes to the next player, who then gets to choose from the exact same set of options for their turn. The game is actually broken down into rounds and turns. So in a round, you're going to be going through the beginning phase and the ending phase once in a round, but during that round, you're going to take turns taking actions, doing stuff. Other key things about this game that are different than other games you may have played: damage is persistent, so you're going to track that. I've already mentioned that in the past, but it is very good and important. Also, every single round, everyone refreshes everything. Everyone gets a chance to play things that give them more mana. And every single round, everyone has the option to taking a combat phase where they can then go and do combat with someone. Now that we've covered those principles, let's get into the actual game. How do you play? So the beginning phase is the start of each round. The beginning phase runs down in the following steps. It starts out with a refresh step. Everyone refreshes everything. So if it is exhausted or tapped or turned sideways, everyone refreshes it so it can be used again for this round. After that, there is the draw step. Everyone draws a single card. Yes. Every single round, everyone draws 1 card. Then we have the economy step. So the economy step is a little bit different. The way you gain resources in this game, resources are like mana if you've played any other game. The way you gain resources in this game, during the economy step, you may empower a card. By empowering a card, you choose a card from your hand, and then you put that on the bottom of your deck, your main deck, and you gain a resource. You may do this only once per round, and it is optional. You do not have to do it if you don't want to. And then the last step of the beginning phase is the new day step. So up until now, you're not allowed to respond to anything that has happened. So if there's a trigger that's happened, it just gets added to the step, and during the new day phase, you run through all of the things that are on the stack in the order that you should. Additionally, there may be cards that say during the new day step, X, Y, and Z happens, or you as a player can play spells or activate abilities during the new day step as well. Once everyone has finished the beginning step, you move into the main phase. So the main phase is where players get to choose one of their 5 actions. Again, that is play a unit, play a spell, activate an ability, go to combat, or pass. And then, like I said before, players can respond to someone playing something as you would in Magic the Gathering. Now, I'm going to assume that play a unit, play a spell, and activate ability are pretty straightforward and kind of you understand those really simple, but begin combat phase and pass are a little bit different. Let's talk about pass first because it's actually going to be a little bit simpler. When you pass, it just means you're not going to do anything on your turn, so your opponent then can play again. If they pass as well and all players consecutively pass, then you move to the ending phase. If you pass this turn and then your opponent plays something else on their turn, you can then choose to do something different when it comes back to your turn. Just because you passed does not mean that you have passed indefinitely, it just means you've passed for now. But if you pass and your opponent passes, assuming it's a 2-player game, you don't get to come back around and say, oh, actually, I want to do this other thing. I'm not 100% sure why I made myself small. I'm just going to go back to being more or less full screen here. It's going to be a lot easier for both of us. When it comes to combat, though, the combat is a little bit different because each player gets the chance to go to combat once per round. So I get to attack, you get to attack, your mom gets to attack, everyone. So the way it works is if I declare go to combat phase as my action, 1, I need to be able to have units that can attack. 2, I must attack with units if I go to the begin combat phase. So you can't just take the begin combat phase, but then nothing actually happens. So there's a little bit of a key thing to note there. In order to go to combat 1, you need to select the location you are attacking. So you need to say specifically like I'm attacking Dark Undercity that is owned by Joe, whatever. So that's what I do. I then declare which units are going to attack and what order they're going to attack in. So from left to right on my perspective as the attacker, I declare which units are going to attack in which order, and then I exhaust them all, or aka tap or turn them sideways. This declares that they are now attacking. The defending player then gets to decide how they want to block. In this game, only 1 blocker can be assigned to 1 attacker. You can't double block or triple block. Additionally, units that are exhausted can also block. So you can block with basically anything you have. Once blockers have been declared, you then start resolving combat 1 step at a time, starting with the leftmost unit. From the attacker's perspective, you resolve that. Players can respond to things, do whatever they want. Once that damage is dealt, the unit either dies or doesn't die, then you move to the next unit, and you go that all the way down until every single unit that is in combat gets resolved. Once all combat has been resolved, you move back to the main phase, and players continue taking actions until all players pass. Again, if you can't physically do anything, you have to pass as well. That's another kind of thing you have to keep in mind. Once everyone is passed consecutively, then you move to the ending phase. The ending phase is broken down into a number of steps, just like you would expect. The first one being the end step. This is where at the beginning of the end step triggers happen and things are resolved as you would expect. And then we have the cleanup step. This is where until end of turn effects wear off, if players have more than 10 cards in hand, they have to discard down to 10 cards, and the initiative token is moved to the player on the left. Or if you're playing a 2-player game, it just moves to the other player. Once that has been completed, you move again back into the beginning phase and carry on until one player is declared the winner. In order to win, as I said before, the objective is to destroy both or all of your opponent's locations. Once that has been done and you are the only one with a location that is not destroyed, you are the winner. For a more detailed breakdown of the rules, you can actually go and read the entire rule set. The link is on the Discord in the rules and frequently asked questions section. Additionally, this is also where the printer play lives, so if you wanted to print this off and try it out, that's where it currently is. All of the cards that are in there will be changing. These are literally just placeholders with placeholder ideas. And now that I'm looking at my script, that's literally all I have. That's the entire video. So until next time though, please go join the Discord, become part of the community, and stay tuned for the next video that is going to be coming out very soon where we start determining theme, because that's going to be awesome. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to game like a giant monster. Well, how do we play those creatures?